Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Peter Haratonik. For those of you who do know me, I'm still Peter Haratonik. But I'm very pleased that you could join us tonight for this Alumni Capstone event, the first event of its kind, in which we're bringing back students who graduated from the media management program to present their capstones to share with all of you who are currently in the capstone class, those others of you who may be in various courses, and those of you who may be considering joining the media management program. I want to thank Leanna Bailey and Linda St. Mark in particular for organizing this. It's through their efforts that we're all here tonight. And I want to particularly thank our alumni for joining us. Anyone happen to know what the word alumnus means? No? I'm not surprised. But it's an interesting etymology. The word alumnus actually is the Latin root for alumnus, alumnae, male and female, for foster child. And it comes from an earlier Latin root, alere, I think it was, for to nourish. And the whole idea of nourishing, and the whole idea of alumni are people who've been nourished. The word pupil, by the way, as in student, comes from a similar root. It means orphan. And you're adopted by the school, and you're nourished by the school. That nourishment, when you graduate, actually works both ways. Because not only those of you who are parents know this, that not only do you teach your children, you learn from them. And not only do we teach students in the university or any school, we learn from them. We learn from you. We learn from them. And so I'm very pleased to be able to be here tonight to share this evening with you and to learn more from our panelists tonight. Our format is simple. I'll introduce each panelist in turn. I've asked them to say a few words about themselves, their background briefly in general, and what they've been up to since graduation. Each presenter will speak to us for a brief period, and then I'll have all of them go through first, 3 of them go through, and then we'll open it up to questions. So take notes on the ones who go first. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions and even more time for socializing, I hope. Our first presenter is Neil Anand. And Neil graduated in 2014. And I'm going to ask Neil to start.
All right. Hey, everybody. First of all, thank you for having us tonight. I mean, this is a great honor, so I appreciate that. Just say a couple words about myself. My name is Neil Anand. I graduated in 2014, this past December, with my MS in media management. I had 3 years of electronic foreign currency brokerage exchange experience before I joined this program. And at that point, I was ready to take inventory of all the experiences that happened here. And I left here with a great deal of knowledge, so I'm really thankful for that and all the people that helped furnish me with that knowledge. I'm going to be speaking to you today about an app that I helped design and I'm looking to take off the ground currently in my free time, now that I've graduated. So yeah, let's get into it. Also, it's completely abbreviated from the way it was. It was like 1 million slides, and now it's like 5, so. All right. Be good if I got my glasses on here. Start from here, the last one. Yeah, let's go back one. All right. So, how many of you guys on a weekly basis access an over-the-top, on-demand video streaming platform, something like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu? Okay, looks about right. And with all these different platforms available, and all these services, and all these different content titles within that, how often do you find that you have trouble navigating that space? By a quick show of hands here. Okay. There's a lot of people out there like that, and if you can click the next thing here. I'm not sure if you can see this, but these are all real tweets in which people are saying, help, I don't know what to watch. If you can't see what's up here, it says, I have so many exams, which movie should I watch first? I have so much homework, what should I watch on Netflix? Big capital letters, what should I watch on Netflix? The most important question I'll ask myself today is what I should watch on Netflix. You know, obviously not an actual important question in the larger scheme of things, but you know, a problem of privilege. Let's put it that way. If you could hit the next slide here. So if we look at the viewing landscape today, more than 250,000 subscribers in 2013 stopped paying for pay TV. And when it comes to over the top, 7.6 million households are cord cutters. I'm sure you know you've gone over cord cutters in your in the experience that you've had here at the new school. Netflix accounts for 35% of all U.S. internet traffic now. I mean, that's a mind-blowing stat. And when it comes to cross-device analysis, smartphones have now replaced TV as a primary source for watching downloaded and streaming videos. So the environment is changing. The way people are looking at this kind of content is changing, watching this content across devices and channels. And it's all fractured. If you could hit the next slide here. Okay. These slides didn't populate the way they were originally supposed to, but bear with me here. There are a lot of sites where people have tried to fix this problem, where they don't know what they want to watch tonight. There's sites like What's on Netflix or iStream Guide, but they actually make the problem a lot more complicated than it really is. You're coming in with a problem, and actually you're leaving a lot more confused and overwhelmed than you were before. You don't know what you want to watch, and it's actually obfuscating the problem. And that's where my solution comes in. This is Streamlister. It's an app and a website that aggregates all the platforms and shows you what's playing across every single one of those platforms. You derive personal, smart recommendations based on your viewing history from each of those platforms, from Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and you find out in the process what you want to watch tonight. And that's sort of the long and short of it. Thank you.
Okay. Now, remember, I already have a couple of questions for Neil, things I've thought about since he presented a version of this the last time. But remember your questions, keep notes on each of our presenters. Jill Hornstein is our oldest alum, not in age, but in the fact that she was part of the 2013 graduating class, and which was the second cohort of the media management program. Jill?
Hi, my name is Jill Hornstein. Like Peter said, I graduated in 2013. Since 2008, I've been working at Viacom, first at VH1 and now at MTV on a cross-brand team. So my project was also to solve a problem that probably a lot of us have, but not really necessarily a media-focused problem like his was. Mine was to solve the problem of roommates, like how do we deal with them in a non-passive aggressive way, and how do we get chores done in a cool way. I chose to do this project because at first I had no idea what to do for my project, as many of you might not, or like if you're already in the program, hopefully you do. But so I had like 3 different projects I was thinking about doing, and the first 2 were just sort of like, okay, I want to get this project done, and then as I started thinking about them, I realized that wasn't really a good way to approach the program. And I just decided instead to focus on a skill I wanted to learn or where I wanted to be after I graduated. So I was in digital production, specifically at VH1 Mobile. So I was managing the VH1 TV Everywhere app and mobile site, which was cool, but not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to get more into product management, and I wasn't really sure how to do that. But I decided to use this project as a way to build myself a portfolio piece to show some of the skills that I knew I could get. So my project, like I said, was an app. I wanted to learn how to do wireframing using specifically a program called OmniGraffle and understand interaction design and user experience design. So what was the project? So I kind of interviewed a bunch of friends, family, people who had lived with people, and kind of identify what the problems were and what like the pain points of living with people were. And a lot of them were doing chores and getting roommates to do chores and people feeling like they were contributing more than other people were. And it seemed that everybody felt this way regardless of whether their roommates felt they did chores or not. So basically, I put together an app that would almost gamify doing chores and make it so that instead of passive-aggressively leaving notes for your roommates to take out the trash or whatever, that you could make it almost like a point system or bribe them using actually real currency or, you know, buy you a six-pack of beer, that kind of thing. You can go to the next slide. So I did a competitive analysis of what was out there, and there were some chore keeper apps, but nothing was really like what I had described. Next, please. So I learned how to use OmniGraffle and did some wireframing. So these are just some examples of the 41 pages I presented as my final project. Yeah, that was pretty much the gist of what I did. And in the end, like I did learn a new skill, and I actually used the skill to transition my role at VH1 in digital production to a role at MTV in a product manager role. So it actually did serve like a really big purpose in my life, so I thought it was a pretty big success for myself, even though I'm not actually making the app as he is. So thanks.
Thank you, Jill. I remember, and Jill was not unlike some of you in the current Capstone and those of you who will be in Capstone, in coming into the Capstone feeling threatened. Remember the SWOT analysis, feeling that the Capstone can be a threat to you. And what you have to learn, the most important thing, is that this is an opportunity. Okay? It belongs in a entirely different category. And once you find that right opportunity, it's no longer a threat. I also want to point out, in case it wasn't emphasized enough by Jill, that this was also a skill set because of this opportunity that she managed to learn in her very last semester as a graduate student. So it was a very impressive turnaround from struggling to find a topic, going through a few other topics, and to finding something that not only was professionally valuable, but also something that could help develop her skill set. Fluss is also a 2014 alum, and I'll have him describe his project.
Hey everybody, I'm Ari, and a lot of what I'm going to say and talk about here is going to probably mirror a lot of what Neil did, so we should probably talk about doing a vaudeville show at some point.
Yeah.
Yes. But basically, real quick show of hands, who here pays for a cable subscription, whether it's Time Warner, Dish, Network, whomever? All right, and those people who didn't raise their hands, just call out, why don't you pay for cable? Anything? Don't like it, you hate TV, you hate media?
Unnecessary.
Unnecessary. Unnecessary, how come?
It's all online.
All online.
Except for live events, but the majority, anything I need is on my Hulu or Netflix.
So you're saying that, so if I'm interpreting what you're saying, you're saying that you don't pay for cable because you can get what you want online for cheaper than you can through a cable account.
Yeah.
Great, well, you're absolutely right. Cable is really, really expensive. In fact, in the years between 1995 and 2013, cable prices rose 6.1%, which is, over the same period, compound interest rates in the U.S. grew 2.4%. So, obviously, that has led to a tripling of the prices of cable in the same 18-year period. And, with everybody paying through the nose and with 100 million homes in the U.S. subscribing to cable on some sort, the cable industry is now a $74 billion a year industry. Big, big business, and they've been able to grow at this sort of rate because they've, the cable companies, they control all the pipelines, they control all the modes of distribution, so all the barriers to entry that you need to compete in this space, they control, and it's been stifling competition. For a long time, there hasn't been a lot of threats, let's say, as Peter put it just now. But for the first time, now that places like Netflix and Hulu are coming at this scene, we're perhaps starting to see cracks in the facade of the cable industry. As Neil mentioned before, for the first time ever, we saw a year-over-year cable subscriber declines in the cable industry. Not a huge number, especially compared to the 100 million homes that they're in, but definitely a sign of a potential changing of the guard. There's been a drop of overall viewing time as people have moved to online platforms. And perhaps the biggest thing that should be of concern to the cable industry is the double-digit declines that the top 20 networks have faced in their ratings. That includes Viacom, that includes MTV, that includes A&E, the company where I work. To put it in perspective, in 2013, A&E's collection of channels between A&E, History, Lifetime, et cetera, they dropped 22% in the ratings, whereas NBC dropped 14, Disney dropped 13. Don't have the numbers on Viacom, but
A lot.
there you go.
Particularly MTV, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the news today, Viacom, obviously. In any event, so a big problem, of course, the advertisers who pay to air their content during these TV shows that they base their ratings on to charge to get their fees up, they're concerned about this. People are fast forwarding through their commercials. They're no longer interacting with the content that advertisers are paying for, and to put it in perspective, as recently as 2008, 83% of all content viewed on cable is seen live. And by 2013, just 5 years later, the number had dropped to 57%. So, for an industry that's lost a third of its for the advertisers who have lost a third of their live viewership in just a 5-year span, it's very, very concerning. What does that leave us? If nobody's watching live TV anymore, what do the advertisers have? The short answer is live content, specifically sports. 99% of all sports content is viewed live or on the same day, whereas closer to 75% or 70%, depending on what category of scripted drama or scripted content you're watching, is viewed live. And that doesn't take into account the fact that people are skipping over the commercials in those scripted areas. So basically, sports has sort of become this sort of holy grail for advertisers because it's got a passionate, ingrained audience. It's got a loyal consumer base that comes back week to week, and it's sort of DVR proof. Like we said, 99% of all people watch sports live. So if you're paying for a commercial during a Yankees game, odds are somebody's going to watch a commercial. And to go back to the loyalty for a second, 43% of all people who watch sports say that they have cable just to keep sports on. So that shows you how valuable it is in the cable package, and the companies who put out the content, be it the channels or the MVPDs, the multi-platform. Say it again?
Multi-video platform distributors.
Thank you.
Nerd.
I'm glad somebody knows that.
So the content providers and the distributors, they're the ones holding the cards, and they're very smart, and they realize how crucial sports is to the bundle. As such, as we see here, the value of sports rights have gone up 18.7% in just 2014. And to give you some numbers around that, the sports licensing fees, the NFL gets about $7 billion a year for its deals between NBC, Fox, and CBS, and ESPN. NBA just signed a deal last year to get $2.6 billion a year over the next 9 or so, I want to say. Big money. And then in order to offset the costs for paying for that content, your channels like your ESPNs, well, not your YES networks, but your regional sports networks, they've got to bump up their programming costs to the MVPDs to get their money back. The MVPDs pass those costs on to the consumers. Consumers start paying more. Licensing fees go up again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, you've got a $100 cable bill at the end of the month. So, what's the solution? Basically, you have to sort of realize sports for what it is. It's a separate sort of entity from everything else in the cable bundle. It's live content. It's interacted with differently from other people, from other content, I should say. And essentially, what my project recommended and ultimately focused on was sort of the overlap of how sports is affecting the cable bundle and how it can sort of be leveraged for future growth and future market success. And for anybody who's familiar with the Innovators Dilemma, sort of my proposal to sort of ease the pain and sort of make all the finances and all the cord cutting and all the sort of sky is falling predictions that we've been hearing recently sort of go away, or to at least alleviate them. I recommend creating sort of an ancillary product in addition to a traditional cable bundle. In addition to your Netflixes and your Hulus, sort of the one thing that's missing from the OTT world these days is a sports-specific program or a sports-specific package. For somebody like me who'd been living without cable for the past 3 years, up until recently, I'm proud to say, there was no real option to watch sports unless you were willing to sit in front of a TV and get it through your digital antenna. But if the people in power, the MVPDs and the sports channels, if they created a sort of an ancillary product that would be that they could offer in addition to their traditional bundle, it'd be sports specific, only sports content, for people who really are willing to pay a premium for access to the sports and who aren't so concerned with, like A&E content or Viacom content, let's say. And sort of to go back to the Innovators Dilemma, the idea for anybody who's not familiar is that, sustainable versus disruptive innovation. While sustaining their current business of the platforms and the big bundles of content, this disruptive business, this disruptive area of OTT that doesn't seem to be going away, getting ahead of that and getting product out to your consumers that they can interact with and they can actually find value in, where some people who are starting to cut the cord have not necessarily. That sort of seems to me like a useful and probably ultimately the way to save your business. If the last thing they want to have happen to them is the same thing that happened to the music industries. So the infrastructure is there. 37% of all TV viewing is currently sports, and 46% of all long-form ads are seen behind the TVE paywalls. So for the advertisers who are concerned about people not watching on their cable packages, the audience is there, the infrastructure is there. It's just a matter of them sort of realizing that this opportunity is available and there's a market for it, and to sort of feed the demand that currently exists.
Thank you, Harry. Harry's work actually is very similar to what's going on in the newspaper industry. And one of the problems is that those of you who do have, how many of you have cable but don't watch sports? Right? Well, you're paying a big chunk of change every month for stuff you don't watch. A huge percentage of your cable bill is going for ESPN and all these things, right? Newspaper, and so what's happening is cable is charging more, the people who are left, who haven't cut, charging them more and more, the way that newspapers are, right? How many of you buy a New York Times every day? What? I'm shocked. There's gambling going on back there. No. Well, the New York Times knows that, but what they're charging is people like me, and not even me, because I don't do it anymore. $250 is up to $250 a day. $275, they're going to keep charging those who are left. But what's the alternative? And that's what they're providing. Okay, I want to sit over here. And open it up to any questions you have. But I have some questions of my own. But please, before I... Questions? Thoughts? Nothing? Boy, they answered everything. And so now all of your projects are equally solved. I have a couple of questions. Neil, one of the things I was thinking about,
yep,
in terms of those other services that are out there, which I've never tried to use, but I do have the dilemma. I mean, I have Netflix, I have a few other things, and quite often, when I'm stuck for something, I don't even know where to begin, right? So part of what you're talking about is if I use this app, it'll sort of prompt me the way, well, people have read this, Amazon, people have read this book, right? But the other thing it got me thinking about in terms of a revenue stream, wouldn't this also then, if I don't have Hulu Plus, and I discover that it's prompting me to a show that I may like that's only, I said, oh, wow, I've heard about this series, but
exactly.
But now I have to subscribe to Hulu Plus, but it may be a driver.
It's an upselling opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right,
because I hadn't thought about that. So
yeah.
Any more thoughts about that?
I feel like you should keep going because you're giving me upselling opportunities. That's good. That's revenue.
Yeah, because I don't think we had talked about that last semester, and it is because in fact it happened to me recently that I was looking for a show, and I tracked it down separately online, and it turned out it was only available on Hulu Plus.
Right.
And I actually thought, well, maybe I should consider Hulu Plus. But if it's all prompting me at once, and I have all those choices, and it makes it easy for me to subscribe.
Yep.
Immediately, a one-click option. All right, but
that's right.
So, very good.
The app has that as a revenue option, and also advertising. Because as you know, advertising is really important, especially in-app mobile advertising is the next big wave, especially if you're doing it right. And so, yeah, there's opportunity to upsell for Hulu and other services that one doesn't have, and then also advertising. So there's another source of revenue there. But yeah, you bring up a really good point.
Okay. And Jill, I had a question. I mean, what do you see from the inside as the future of an MTV, which now 25 years ago, before many of you were born, was one of the most innovative things in television? Remember when MTV started around 1990, the whole idea of a 24-hour channel devoted to showing basically commercials for the then music industry the way it existed was radical. So how do social media, how do apps, how do all tie into how Viacom or how MTV in particular thinks about their digital future?
Well, just for the record, these opinions are my own. It
Yes,
do not
yes.
reflect those of my employer. But it's kind of like what Ari said about like the Innovators Dilemma. That's kind of like what I bring up every time people ask me like, why doesn't MTV do this or that? And it's really hard to innovate when the hand that feeds you is the cable companies, and you really can't cannibalize that business when, like, you know, granted, we're not making as much off of each subscriber as an ESPN, who's making over $4 per subscriber. You know, the Viacom suite of channels is probably making like within like 20 cents per channel per subscriber. But we can't really say, oh, you know what, like you can circumvent getting cable by using this service or that service. So it's really a big challenge from the digital side specifically. So you know, we are doing a lot using like TV Everywhere, both in our apps and on our websites now. So hopefully people, it doesn't seem like people really understand that concept though, of like logging in with your cable provider, and especially for like the MTV audience who's a lot younger and who either A, has to ask their parents for the cable login, which doesn't seem to be something they understand or want to do, or like maybe they just don't even have it if it's like a college student. So that's definitely a pain point that we're trying to address. But TVE is, which is TV Everywhere, which is how you log in with your cable provider, is a standard across all cable providers. So it's kind of hard to innovate without disrupting your current business. So, I mean, I think that's something that, you know, as within the last few months, there's been like a major restructuring at Viacom, and it's something that we're looking forward to seeing how it will be addressed. I don't think there's actually a full answer yet, but it's definitely something that we will see within the next year, and whether that's offering content on standalone services, that's one option, or putting stuff in front of behind the TV wall, experimenting with different strategies for that, that's another option. But I'm honestly not sure what's going to happen, and I think like everybody internally is sort of just waiting to hear what the plan is, and maybe it's the same at A&E, but you know, the challenge of MTV specifically is the audience is so young, and that's the audience that is not interested in paying $100 and some for every cable channel. They only want to watch what they want to watch when they want to watch it, and it's not really like a brand loyalty to a channel rather than a brand loyalty to a specific show or piece of content. So it's definitely a challenging question and an interesting time for the media industry overall.
And then, Ari, that Jill's response ties into the question I have for you in terms of, with ESPN, for example, getting close to $5 per subscriber out of that cable bill, yet knowing that there's going to be fewer of those, what do you see as the trajectory? How could this debundling actually happen for the sports channels? And it's, again, the Innovators Dilemma. How do we realize that this market is changing, but how do we make money? How do we capture it?
It's a very good question.
All right.
You know, I think ESPN sort of, or you know, the sports channels are in a sort of unique position compared to the Viacom or to A&E, in that, you know, like I said before, sports is very specialized content. You know, it's content that people are fanatical about, people, you know, seek out passionately. You know, I don't want to you know, impose my own feelings on, you know, the sort of the typical sports viewer. But
Oh, please do.
well, you know, I think there's a sizable audience of people who pay for sports and who are interested in sports that would be willing to, you know, sort of forego, you know, Duck Dynasty on A&E, or, you know, maybe like.
Well, I don't know about Duck Dynasty. I mean, I wouldn't forego that. But.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how the public feels in a couple months.
Well, but I think that raises another question. So really, you're seeing a transition to a point. Okay, seeing a transition to a point that it would, people would be only going for sports.
Well, I think sort of, as the digital future shapes up, to use a term, I think, like Lauren said, there's a lot of uncertainty as to how exactly unbundling is going to happen. I don't think anybody wants unbundling to happen. At A&E, like, we're very happy to be a part of, a greater cable system where we can get into 100 million homes. I think as more platforms like Sling or or PlayStation Vue start coming out, there's going to be more focus and more niche bundles. So the bundles are going to just be sort of self-curated within platforms, I think, as opposed to being sort of a one-size-fits-all catch-all.
Right. Ali.
And one of the biggest thing is NFL is now offering a subscription only for its channel, like for its viewers. How would it be if each MLS NBA does the same thing in the future, and like everybody is moving away from the cable TVs?
Well, that's not going to happen just yet because the rights to air their games are locked up. So if ESPN or the NFL, they have their own channel, MLB, they have their own channel too. They don't actually. A key thing to know is that they don't actually air games on those channels. They have deals with the broadcasters like NBC and CBS because those are the outlets that the most people get access to. Even if you don't have a cable subscription, you can still log on. You can still get it through the broadcast signals. So should a time come where they want to take all their stuff off of ESPN or off of whichever channel, I don't think anything could stop them from doing that. I think they'd be foolish to do that because so much of the infrastructure and so much of the power of an ESPN is how connected they are with consumers. I mean, ESPN is huge and social. They have a way of interacting with their fans. They have a way of marketing with their fans that, while the NFL and the NBA or whomever else, they have their own fan interactions and they have their own way of getting their content out. Because these sports channels have been doing this for so long, it's sort of like it's sort of a business strategy. Like, do you want to develop something yourself, or do you want to just like buy, invest in it and pay for something else? Like Facebook buying WhatsApp, like, same thing.
Right now, they can, if they start, the NFL starts to build its own operation right now, television, media operations right now. In 10 years, in 5 years, they can reach there. They can reach that quality. For you,
sure.
Is it possible in like 10 years? Or 5 years? Or
absolutely. I think it sort of goes back to some of the things that we were discussing, where it's a lot of it's going to depend on how the cable companies and their current strategies shape up as digital becomes more and more prevalent. I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing. Of course, I don't think it's going to be. I personally don't envision a time where the NFL they keep all their content proprietary and they don't license it out to anybody else. But I mean, to your point, right now I know that the NBA definitely, the NHL definitely does a package where you can sign up for this thing called NHL GameFly, something along these lines. You can get any NHL game playing on that night, except for the games playing in your local market. So they already have the infrastructure, they already have the capabilities to do this. But I think that the fact that they're holding back those rights in the local markets is sort of telling us what their strategy is, because the people who are broadcasting those local markets, they have the local know-how, they have the consumer, the market insights to really maximize and to make the content that much more effective than the leaks with themselves.
Other hand. Yes.
This question can apply for the three. I want to know in what degree does the knowledge acquired in the program change your career perspectives and options?
Me specifically?
Any of you.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, man. You start.
When I came into the program, I was working independent film. I'm now working in broadcast or in cable TV, so there was obviously a shifting there. Coming to the program, it definitely gave me, without knowing exactly what I wanted out of it when I got here, I knew that there was a language that I wanted to speak in terms of how media business is conducted, how people interact and like what they talk about when they talk about media, media management, media studies, whatever have you. In doing this, in doing my capstone project and in going through the various classes that I had throughout the program, I found that just knowing what the Innovators Dilemma is, or knowing how to, just being reminded of what a SWOT analysis is. I find that I actually use those things in my day-to-day job. And in doing the research for this project, I've been doing similar sorts of research for different areas of my job currently. So, the short answer to your question is, I found that the stuff that I've learned here and the experiences that I had here have helped significantly. But that said, that also depends on what you want coming into it, what you want to come out of it with, and sort of how you marry those two.
Do you want to take it?
Yeah. So like I would agree, like I definitely, like when I started, I kind of felt like I was stagnating in my job. I was really more on like a digital content focus, and it was really just like a upload this content, figure out when the best time to put it up was. And, you know, that was cool when I was like just graduating from undergrad, and then I was like kind of feeling like I was stagnating. Like you, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, but I knew I wanted to do something else, and I wasn't really sure how to get there. So I signed up for this program, and, you know, whether it was reading a bunch of different books I would have never have read, or case studies, or learning different ways of speaking about things, or even just thinking about things from a business perspective rather than a content perspective, that really helped me greatly. And then, like I said earlier, like I chose to focus my capstone project on actually just learning a new skill, and that specifically like was a catalyst for my transitioning from the role I had before to the role I have now, which I'm much more satisfied with, and I feel like I'm actually like doing a lot more challenging work than I was before. So that's really been great. And then just like overall, just like knowing the different like ways of thinking about things, and also the relationships. Like I've had classes with some of you guys during my time, and just like having met people that I wouldn't have met before, like really gave me different perspectives and different points of view that maybe I would never have thought of before. But just like having open dialogues and speaking with people from different backgrounds like really helped me understand like a more holistic picture of what we're working with here in the media landscape, rather than, or compared to what I came in with. So I thought it was really valuable overall. Just like he said, it was really what you put into it, you get. So if you just come into class and, you know, do the minimum and don't really talk to people and don't participate, like you may not get so much out of it. But I felt that I did participate and did like do extra, so I really got a lot out of it personally and professionally.
Now, you bring up a really good point here too, and that's that it is what you put into it is what you get out of it. When I came into this program, I had just come out of Wall Street, and I knew that I always loved music, and I didn't know how I was going to gain practical knowledge. So I was like, I have two options. I could join the media studies program or the media management program. I decided to go to media management because I thought, you know, this will give me a practical tool set that I can use when I look for jobs when I get out of school. I remember sitting down with Paul very early on and saying, you know, I'm really interested in music. What do you think I should do? And he gave me some good insight, and I took his media management course. And, you know, you learn about SWOT analyses, and you write case studies. You go through all these different classes, and at times you could think, what am I getting out of this? Like, I'm taking this media economics course, and it seems kind of dry, but is this helpful or not? And then at the end of it, it's like when you're going through the finish line, you realize all this stuff is the inventory of knowledge that you've amassed while you're here. Today I was at a job interview. That's why I'm dressed up. And I ended up... Not for this. For this. I was in a job interview, and they asked me, have you ever written advertising case studies? I was at an interview for an ad server company. And I said, yeah, actually, I have. And I pulled out one of my case studies that I wrote for the Innovation and Digital Marketing course that I took on Topshop's digital ad campaign with Google. And they looked at it and were immediately like, oh, that's a great campaign, amazing. And it was immediately something that I could use as a resource. So when I say taking inventory, it's really taking an active interest in every single thing that you do here. And that's really paid off in spades, I think, for these guys as well.
Another question. I thought there was another hand up. No other questions?
Do you have any capstone-related questions about how to get through it, or?
Please, Jude.
Did any of you have an idea in the beginning of your capstone and then eventually change it, or I'm having a problem with my capstone?
I can take this one.
I have this big idea and it's not going the way that I want it. So what did you, if any of you have been through, what did you do as a benchmark to kind of steer you in whatever direction you need to go to so you can graduate?
That's a great question, and thank you for that. When I first started my capstone, it was something about music. I had just taken this music business and media course, and I was like, oh, I was so into it, and I knew everything on a really granular level, and I was like, okay, so it's the performance rights organizations and the streamers and all this stuff, and I had this big idea, but I didn't know how to get it down, how to really do it. And I remember talking about it with Linda and Peter, and you know, they were saying this is a really, you know, this is a big idea. You need to take this down a little bit. I remember feeling frustrated. I was already a month in, maybe a month and a half in. I mean, you were there too. I was really going forward with this for a long time. Midway through, I was completely frustrated. I went home after the Capstone class, put on my TV, then I realized, like, I don't know what to watch. I'm even more frustrated. And I'm like, I'm going to fix this. And that's how it happened. So sometimes it could strike you out of nowhere. And I would say leave yourself open to those kind of occurrences. Like, find a way to pivot if that's what you want to do, because that's what worked for me. And sometimes, and you know, I think the project went well. It's now I LLC'd the business. I'm starting to get it off the ground. I'm finding developers. Like it's moving. So pivot if you need to.
The tweet he posted is, I have an exam. What should I watch on TV? I have a capstone to do. What should I watch on TV? I can't figure it out.
That's exactly how it works.
So,
I changed my project, I think, twice. Like the first day of class, I don't even actually remember what my first idea was, but I was like pretty set on doing it. And then when we started talking it out, you guys asked a lot of questions, and like I was really, at first I was like, I think I just have to drop out of this program because I don't want to do this anymore. But then I was like, you know what, like these are good questions, because like I'm just happy I didn't get like too far into this before these questions came up, and there's things that I wouldn't have been able to do. So then the next time we met in person, I had a different idea, and I wanted to do some sort of like social, like 360 campaign for a business that a friend of mine runs. And yeah, and I was like, you know, and I came up with this whole thing for that. And again, like, you know, you guys asked a lot of questions of me, and I was like, those I could answer, but then as I was thinking about them more, I was sort of like, this is pointless. Like, this is not really going to, like, do anything for me as a professional or even personally. Like, it's really the second project I picked was something, like, I knew I could do, and it was sort of like let's just get this project over with. And then, like, I think, like, we had another class meeting, like, 3 weeks later, and I was just like, by the way, completely new project. Here it is. And, like, what I did was just think about, like you, I was frustrated, and I was like, well, what do I want? Where do I want to be when I'm done with this program, and what do I want to do? And, like, I didn't know. Like, when I was thinking about that, I was, like, really like, oh, man, like, this is frustrating. Like, I really don't even know where I want to be, so how do I even make a plan to get there? And then I was just, like, sort of, like, talking to coworkers, and I was like, man, I wish I was on your guys' team. And they were like, well, why don't you try to be? And I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. So, like, I mean, like, hello, duh. But, like, it's not really always, like, that clear when you're in it. So that was, like, sort of, like, the impetus for my like, deciding on wanting to develop a skill set. And then, so they were, like, a lot of people told me, like, you know, you can't actually work on something, like, a project independently if you don't actually care about it. So they told me, like, think about something you care about. Think about a problem in your life. Seems like the same thing for you. Yeah. Think about a problem in your life that is plaguing you, like, regularly, and that you want to solve. And for me, that was, I lived with 3 people at the time, and I was like, oh my God, why won't this person ever clean up these beans off the counter? I'm going crazy. And then I was like, oh, like, you know what? Like, I can take this problem that I have a vested interest in and take this skill set that I want to develop and kind of mold those together. And that's how I came up with the project that I ended up doing. And even though I'm not actually going to be developing it into an app like you are, it's still, like, developing the skill set and, like, understanding that, like, method of thinking of, like, okay, like, what's something that's a real problem and what's something I want to solve, rather than, like, trying to, like, think of, like, the most, like, either intellectual project or the easiest project. Like, those are, like, the 2 other, you know, endpoints, I think, of the spectrum. Like, instead of doing that, just focus on something that you find like something you struggle with in your life, and then think about how you can make that into a project and figure out a solution, like, that would actually just help you if it existed. So I think that's maybe a good starting point. Like, just look around you and think, like, what's a problem for me and how do I solve that problem?
Other questions?
Best advice.
Yeah. It also reminded me of Marshall McLuhan's famous line about, I don't know who discovered water, but I'm certain it wasn't a fish. And meaning that you have to step out sometime, really look at yourself. What's going on here? Sometimes we get so trapped up inside that we can't look at that. And these little things often make us do that, but sometimes we have to make ourselves do that. Well, if there's no more formal questions for the cameras and for the home audience, I invite our guests here, all of us here, to have some refreshments and have some casual talk. Again, I want to thank Neil, Jill, and Ari for joining us. And Linda.
May I ask the last question?
Linda wishes to ask a question, so we certainly will.
If each of you could tell us your best advice for future capstone students and current capstone students.
Cool.
I would say just, I would say stay the course. There were a lot of times when I was going through my project where I was like, well, shit, this is just a dumb idea. There's no way the cable companies would ever go for it. This is just, I'm running into a dead wall, right before I even get started. 2 months into doing the capstone, HBO announced they were going to be going outside of the bundle. So that was a godsend for me because it sort of legitimized a lot of things that I'd been thinking about, didn't have tangible evidence for. So, even if you have doubts, even if you find yourself being like halfway through thinking yourself that this is a stupid idea, that you don't want to do it for whatever reason, my colleagues up here have obviously had a lot of success sort of shifting course midstream. But I think that, now once they've found their things, I don't want to speak for them, but, it seems like, once you have an idea that you're passionate about, that you think you can actually see through, I would say, stick through it, put the research in, put the work in, and, eventually you're going to find something that, you're actually interested in, can be supportive of.
I think I kind of sort of just touched on it with what I had said a minute ago, but like really think about where you want to be when you're done with this course, and then think about the steps that you can take within the capstone program to get there. Like I've been hearing a lot like, oh, like you can't get to where you're going without knowing where you're going. So like if you just have like an end goal, think about how to break that down into smaller, tangible, actionable steps, and you will be able to get there. Like if you just think about everything as like, oh, this is like such a big thing, I want to be somewhere one day, how do I get there? It's going to be a lot more challenging than if you say, okay, I want to be here. Like work your way backwards in small actionable items, and I think that that's like really a key way to approach something like an open-ended project, or even just like your career or life. Like just take small steps to get to where you want to go, and then like a couple of years down the line, like you'll be like, wow, I did so much and here I am, and I can't believe like it wasn't necessarily easy, but it wasn't as hard as I had thought, because it was small things rather than like a giant vast problem that like you can't even begin to start. So I think that's it for me.
I have to agree with my fellow panelists here that making things small makes them actionable. Another thing that I would add is remember to take advantage of the resources that you have here. The capstone can be difficult. It can be really frustrating if you're in the middle of it and you hit a roadblock and you don't know how to get past it. Our professors make themselves available to us, and it actually really helped me. I thought, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this meeting. I'm just going to go into it and see what happens. And Linda helped me with trademark advice. Your fellow classmates can help you if they have connections. People talk about how it's all about who you know in grad school. That's actually true. It helps for finding jobs afterwards, it helps for advice afterwards, and it's the same for your capstone during the process. If you know somebody who is within an industry already or works within that industry, you can get great advice by sitting down with them, and you could also use them as a resource at the end of your paper. Yeah.
Good.
One last thing
Sure.
that's up here. Never mind. Well, you should definitely be in touch with the registrar's office because they did spell my name wrong on my diploma. So make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. Yeah.
Okay, good advice there too. All right, thanks very much.